Reptiles with Rom Whitaker. What inspired you to study reptiles?
Well, the journey started when I was a very, very small lad, about 4 years old as a matter of fact, and I lived in a little village really in northern New York State with my single mother and my sister, and I used to roam the hills and the fields. My mother was incredible. She actually encouraged me to get out there and become a little nature boy. And one day I turned over a rock and I found a milk snake. And by that time, my mother had known that there were no venomous snakes around, and she knew I was a kid who was just fascinated by anything that creeps and crawls. So when I brought home the milk snake, she didn't freak out and say, "Get it out of here," the way the average mother would. She said, "Wow, how beautiful." That was probably the instant when I sort of focused my attention on the creepiest, crawliest animal in the world, of course, which is the snake. So that was a love affair which started at age 4.
Can you talk about your journey to becoming a conservationist?
Well, when people pick up my book, they're going to realize that this guy, who's now a so-called conservationist, wasn't always a conservationist.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, it was the accepted thing for little boys to go around with air guns and catapults, plinking and shooting birds. But I kind of brought a little bit of science into it, even early on, because when I killed a bird, I either ate it, number one, or number two, I skinned it and saved the skin for scientific work. And later on, all this skins that I collected went to a museum in the United States. So yeah, you can blame me for being a hunter in those days, but at least I was a hunter with a conscience.
What has been the influence of your work?
You know, I think what I've done already has made a considerable influence. And the proof of that is when I first started out in the 60s, when I first made the Madras Snake Park in 1969, there were very few people interested in snakes. Now look at it today.
Yeah.
There are thousands of people interested in snakes. I'm not saying I can be blamed for all of it, but certainly there is some credit that I deserve that
Yeah.
people have taken on the interest and seen my interest and the way I've probably fairly crazily spread all this news either through my writings or through my books or through the movies that I've made. And it's not only me, of course, now, because there's been a kickoff effect. And some of the guys who were just kids when I was first starting out are now very senior conservationists and scientists in some of the most reputed institutions in India. So I'm very proud of that. And all I hope is that the snakes appreciate it too.
How have threats to reptiles evolved over the years in India?
Well, originally when I first started working with snakes back in the 1960s, if you can believe it, that long ago, the snakeskin industry was very big, and tens of millions of snakes were being killed for their skins. So luckily the Indian Wildlife Act came in and stopped that, and the export and the killing of snakes stopped to a great degree. But I think nowadays people have a very different attitude towards snakes than they used to. It's getting more and more positive, but people are still frightened. Some people are frightened of snakes. And even though very few species of snakes are venomous, people see a snake and some people will kill it upon sight. Now these are the kind of people who have to be woken up to realize that, look, most snakes are not venomous. No snake is out to get you or anything like that. They just want to be left alone. So this is a very important thing to try to teach people.
Could you tell us more about the reptile trade industry?
Well, right now the reptile skin industry is usually based on captive propagation of snakes, and it's a sustainable industry. Snakeskin industry still is mostly based in places like Indonesia. But for example, I worked on the crocodile project in Papua New Guinea for several years. And there they are rearing crocodiles on a sustainable basis, taking the surplus from the nests. Most of those babies would have otherwise died in the wild, and they're rearing them up for skins. This is something which is possible and something which is, has been going on for years and is actually protecting the animal and keeping him safe.
education help to conserve reptiles?
Well, yeah, the Crocodile Bank is an example of basically an education institution where people can come and learn about crocodiles and appreciate them for. But conserving crocodiles in the wild is another ball game entirely. I mentioned earlier a place called Charutar in Gujarat state where people have a very strong and positive relationship with crocodiles. But there are other parts of the same state actually in Gujarat where there is quite a bit of conflict between crocodiles and humans. Now there is a prime case for educating people about how to avoid any conflict with crocodiles. And this has to be done in a much, much stronger way in other parts of the country as well.
How can people living around reptiles avoid conflict?
Well, basically, it's trying to get people to learn how the habits of animals. In case of snakes, learning what species of snakes are around and which snakes you want to definitely avoid. And that's right, getting rid of all those sort of misconceptions and stories and myths that we talked about earlier. So that's a very good starting point, and get people to appreciate that snakes and crocodiles have such an important part in the ecosystem. For example, snakes eat all the rats and mice that destroy all of our food crops. And without snakes, we could have famine. There are just so many rats and mice in rice fields and wheat fields. And in case of crocodiles, they're cleaning the rivers. Any dead fish or any dead animal, they feed and clean the river and actually raise the quality of, well, for one thing, we've got a fish that was introduced from Africa, a catfish, many years ago, and now it's proliferating throughout all the rivers in India, and crocodiles are feeding on them in great quantities. So they're actually helping us keep the fisheries on top.
Could you share some interesting stories from the field?
Yeah, I've got a few that I can relate to you. For example, when I was in Gujarat, again, a long time ago, and I was with several forest officers, and we were doing a night survey with our torches on the edge of a lake. And I wanted to demonstrate something to them, and so I started calling, which is the sound of a baby crocodile. And I saw a crocodile coming toward us, and the forest officers who I were with, their eyes sort of got bigger and bigger. And this crocodile actually came right out almost to our feet. And well, I stepped back, and these guys stepped back much faster and got out of the way really quick. So yeah, the crocodile wasn't attacking, but he or she, it was probably a female, was thinking that one of her baby crocodiles was under pressure and was trying to come to defend her.
Yeah.
In another case, I was in New Guinea, and we were on a boat, and we were again surveying crocodiles in this rather small stream on a tributary of the river, and there were tall embankments on both sides of us. And suddenly a crocodile leaped from the bank. He wanted to get into the water right over our heads onto the other side. That was totally amazing to us. We were just very lucky he didn't land inside the boat. Wow, that was very close.
Who are the Irulas? What can we learn from them?
I think the snake-catching tribe of the Irulas was such an impressive find for me because I was always searching for a peer group. I'm talking about the 1960s, okay? This is a long time ago, I realize. But at that time, there were no snake people around in India. Well, there were snake charmers who told a lot of lies and messed up the snakes pretty badly by ripping their fangs out. But meeting the Irulas was, for me, fantastic. These people really knew what they were looking at and how to find snakes, and they knew about them, their habits. And I think the most important thing we can learn from them is observation in nature, paying attention to nature, and learning how to observe nature and interpret what things are going on with nature. Well, in this case, with snakes. So that's what they taught me, and it has been a marvelous experience.
Are there any other local communities living closely with reptiles?
I think when you ask about people who actually get along with reptiles, two fantastic examples occur right here in India. And one is in a place called Charuta in Gujarat, where the people have made friends with the local mugger crocodiles and they get along beautifully. It's incredible. It has to be seen to be believed. People washing their clothes, fishing, and the crocodiles right next to them. And another place are some small villages in Bardhaman district in West Bengal, a village called Posla and another one called Chotu Posla, and a couple of other villages where people are very happy to get along with monocellular cobras. That is an incredible thing to see.
Wow.
And if we could replicate this throughout the country, we wouldn't be having all these problems of snake bite, for one thing. Cobras just don't worry about humans, and humans just don't worry about cobras. And this has been in existence for hundreds of years. And I went there and I saw cobras approaching me, and they never spread their hoods. I, of course, froze. And wait a minute, it's coming close. And the people there said, no, no worries at all. And it would just crawl right past me or right in between my legs and do nothing. So it was such a happy experience.
Can culture and conservation go hand in hand?
Well, luckily in India, people worship cobras. I mean, in Hinduism, cobras are featured almost in any temple you go anywhere in the country. So this gives conservation a little bit of a lift, because if there's a religious feeling, a positive religious feeling towards snakes, it helps a lot. We're very lucky to have that.
How has the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 helped reptiles?
Oh yeah, the Wildlife Protection Act was an essential piece of legislation that was so dearly needed at that time. And you know, interesting how it coincided with the growth of the conservation movement. Because in the late 60s and early 70s, that was when the World Wildlife Fund also started out, thanks to Zafar Fateh Ali and a group of wonderful people who actually got it going in India. So WWF-India started at the same time as the Wildlife Act was brought in. It was a perfect melding of the right kind of things to happen for conservation in India. It was a wonderful time, and we owe it all to those people who brought it about.
Can development and reptile conservation go hand in hand?
Yeah, to reach a happy balance of development and conservation is probably the biggest challenge facing, well, not only India, around the world. Because as our population grows, we have to feed them, we have to look after them. At the same time, we have to keep our biodiversity intact. So you've opened up a subject which we could go on for hours and hours discussing and trying to sort out. But it really takes a lot of intelligence and a lot of careful thinking to do things right. And let's just hope we're on the right track.
Can you share a successful reptile conservation story with us?
Around the world, certainly, but let's look at India. When I first did the crocodile surveys that I did in the early 1970s, the population of gharial was down below 200. 200! It was on the edge of extinction. And now, in one river alone, the Chambal River, which is its best habitat, there are thousands of gharial there now. And thousands of hatchlings are being produced every year. And this was a very, very important impetus that the government and a lot of, well, NGOs like the Madras Crocodile Bank and other people put a lot of effort into it. And the gharial has been saved from extinction.
What can one do to support reptile conservation?
Yeah, I mean, you can't put out a reptile bath the way you can put out a bird bath, because chances are the dog or the cat will drink it all up. But yeah, I think just being aware that snakes and other reptiles are around, having geckos in your house is actually an incredible advantage. They eat all the cockroaches. I've taken some wonderful photographs of a little tiny gecko eating a huge cockroach and tried to spread the word around. Hey, don't be frightened of geckos. They're your friends. So that's where it starts, in the home. And once you can get people over that, that's a very good start.
How can students be involved in reptile conservation?
Yeah, I think we at the Madras Crocodile Bank have a volunteer program, as well as at the Agombe Rainforest Research Station. And I know that WWF has volunteer programs. So that's where to start. get onto a volunteer program to start with, and it depends on your focus, whether it's birds or reptiles. Wonderful that India has so many different organizations, wildlife conservation organizations. You have to, luckily you can go online and study this. Back in those days, where would you go, and how would you find out about these organizations? So, but nowadays you can go online and find out the organization that suits you best and join up with them. Start out as a volunteer and become a professional. That's the way you do it.